don't see any attendees yet. Oh, there's one.
Here.
Commissioner Beaumont.
Here.
Commissioner Lightfoot.
Here.
Commissioner Brett Johnson has called and said he will not be here. Commissioner Aldrich.
Here.
Chair McCauley is here. So we have 6 of 7. If there's any actions we need to take, we do have a quorum. If you would all please rise and face the nearest flag you have and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Director, do we have any correspondence that we have received that needs to be entered into the record?
We do not have any correspondence received.
Okay, we have no correspondence. Anyway, if the secretary comes on, Ms. Tillotson, if you would let me know if you come on, I will let you do further roll calls. Our next item, number 4, is the approval of the agenda. Are there any proposed modifications to the agenda?
I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion of approval by Commissioner Aldrich. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, then I'm just going to read down the list as I see it here. Commissioner Alan Johnson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Fortney.
Yes.
Commissioner Beaumont.
Yes.
Commissioner Lightfoot.
Yes.
Commissioner Aldrich.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, we have approved the agenda as proposed. The next item is business from the floor. This is a time to address the commission with issues that are not on the agenda for tonight, but that are within the commission's subject matter jurisdiction. We ask presenters to limit their presentation to 3 minutes. If you're representing a group, we can give you a little bit more time, but this is all per the state government code and the Vacaville Municipal Code, how it relates to business from the floor. Is there anyone who wishes to address us on business from the floor. And I'll ask in this, we go over to the attendees list to see if anyone's hand is raised there. So I do not see anyone indicating that they wish to bring up business from the floor. So I will move on to item number 6, is the consent calendar. The only item on the consent calendar is the approval of the minutes of the July 21, 2020 meeting. Are there any recommendations for corrections to those minutes?
Yes, Commissioner yeah, I'll move to approve the minutes, Commissioner Beaumont.
Okay, so I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Beaumont. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Aldridge. Again, I will call the roll. Commissioner Alan Johnson.
I'm going to abstain since I don't have the meetings in my packet.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Beaumont.
Aye.
Commissioner Lightfoot.
Yes.
Vice Chair Fortney.
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge.
Yes.
Macaulay, Chair votes aye. So we have approved the consent calendar.
Chairman Macaulay,
Okay.
I apologize. Point of order. It appears that at the beginning of the meeting, your vocal part was not heard. Albert, can you please verify which parts were missing so that the chair may go ahead and clarify anything that needs to be clarified?
Correct, yes. It was a statement before the roll call began.
Okay. So apparently the beginning of the meeting was not properly broadcast. So I'm going to quickly review the script to make sure that anyone who did not hear it does. This evening's meeting is being conducted in accordance with the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20. And please bear with us as we go through the issues that sometimes come up with doing remote tools. In addition, with the prospects of rolling blackouts, it's possible that some of the participants could drop off of the line, and that could even include commissioners. If any of the commissioners' lines drop out of the participant list, we ask you then call in, and the call-in information is provided on the front of the written agenda, and we'll stop our proceedings until those commission members can call back in. The instructions for anyone to call in are on the agenda and available on the city's website. You can watch this meeting on channel 26, but because there's a delay, if you want to participate, channel 26 is not the proper choice for you. You would either call in or use Zoom. Callers who wish to comment can raise their hand by pressing *9 on their phone. Then depending upon what settings you have, once you've been recognized, you may need to press *6 to unmute your phones. Those who are on Zoom can raise their hand by clicking the raise hand button that is within Zoom. We hopefully don't have any rolling blackout or other technical issues, but if so, we would rather stop to make sure everyone can participate and deal with some dead air than rush forward, avoid dead air, but miss public participation. So my apologies for having to go through that a second time. I think we are now done with items 1 through 6 and 1 again, just to make sure, and we are ready to go to item number 7, which is business. 7A is the downtown parking study, and I don't know if Mr. Baderi or Ms. Hayes will be making the presentation, but I will now turn this over to staff.
Okay, thank you, Chair Macaulay. Yes, Tyra Hayes, Senior Planner, working on the downtown specific plan, will be making this presentation. Tyra?
Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. So, as some of you may remember, last June we had done a presentation on the downtown specific plan as it relates to the parking analysis and policy strategy. During that presentation, we gave you an overview of what you could expect in terms of the public draft of this document. Tonight's presentation is part 2 of that presentation, and we're mainly going to be focusing on the parking recommendations. Next slide, please. Just a quick note for anyone who may be listening into this meeting. Everything I discussed tonight can be found on the city's public outreach website, letstalkvacaville.com. On there, you can click on the Vacaville Downtown Specific Plan graphic and have access to all the documents and meetings that have occurred to date. Next slide, please. So in the interest of time, I'm going to go over a little bit of what we've done to date and how it's led us to the parking recommendations we're going to be focusing on. Last September, the city conducted a parking study That parking study looked at on-street parking as well as the 13 publicly owned parking lots located downtown. In addition to that, it did take a look at one privately owned parking lot that does have a shared parking agreement with the city, which does permit the public to use that parking lot during certain times. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the summary of the parking study as it relates to the publicly owned parking lots. So of the 13 parking lots that were surveyed, 99% of the 2-hour sign spots were full during the peak of the day, which goes from noon to 1:30 Monday through Friday. The majority of these lots, or most of the lots with the majority of the utilization, were lots 4, 6, and 7. Lot 4 is the library lot. Lot 6 is the lot located across the street from Pietro's number 1 on Sternin and Mason. And lot 7 is the triangle lot located behind Merchant and Main, or the Cal Hawaii building, depending on your perspective. The other parking lots that are currently signed for 4-hour parking reach an 81% capacity during the lunch hour. In this case, the spaces most used were found again in lot 7, the triangle lot, but they were also found in lot 11. This is the lot that's located on the corner of Mason Street and Elizabeth Street. Next slide, please. So while some of the lots do approach capacity during the lunch hour, if we take a comprehensive view of all the publicly owned parking lots downtown, there is ample parking to address current parking needs. This slide shows on the bottom in the red circles that roughly anywhere from 50 to 60% of all the short-term parking spaces are used during the peak hours during the weekdays. Next slide, please. As I had mentioned, the parking study also took a look at on-street parking. The majority of the on-street parking is signed for long-term parking. That means it permits parking beyond 4 hours, whereas the remainder of the parking areas are signed for short-term parking, which can be either 2-hour or 4 hours in duration. As one can expect, the most heavily used areas are located in the most desirable portions of the city. Here, the map shows areas in red where the on-street parking reaches 90 to 100% of capacity during the noon hour. The areas that are shown in either orange or yellow on your screen will reach anywhere from 80 to 90% during the same time period. Next slide, please. So this table is very similar to the one you saw previously. However, this one focuses just on-street parking. This shows that even at the peak of the day, there is ample parking on the streets to accommodate the current parking need. When we look at on-street parking at a cumulative level, it looks like roughly 40% of on-street parking is used during the noon hour. Next slide, please. So anyone looking for more information regarding the parking study can find the parking study on the Let's Talk Vacaville website. In addition, there was another presentation given last week. That presentation dove into the results of the parking study in more detail, and that is available for viewing. So now we're going to move into the parking recommendations and touch upon how we came about creating those recommendations. Next slide, please. So the purpose of this document, which we casually refer to as the parking recommendation document, is to provide a list of recommendations as it relates to parking in downtown that will be used to inform the creation of the downtown specific plan, which is slated for adoption in early 2021. So the recommendations we're about to go over are broken up into 3 categories. They're broken up into capital improvements, which is just another name for physical improvements. They're broken up into operational improvements and policy improvements. Next slide, please. So we've been working on the downtown specific plan for just over a year now, and we've had numerous outreach opportunities and meetings. And we wanted to let the Planning Commission know that when it relates to parking, we've received a lot of comments, and a lot of those comments have been reflected in tonight's recommendations. Next slide, please. So now we're going to start discussing the proposed recommendations. I would like to note as we move through these are simply recommendations. These are not approved in any way. They are subject to further discussion. I do invite the Planning Commission as well as the public after the presentation to provide any additional insight to any of these recommendations and to make their thoughts and or concerns known. So the capital improvements being proposed within the parking recommendation document include improving lot configuration, improved wayfinding signage, improving the streetscape improvements along those parking lots, as well as the street frontage leading from the parking lot to the final destination someone might be visiting that day. It also includes improving lot amenities. Lot amenities can include anything from wayfinding signage, as we just noted, but it can also include other amenities such as benches, enhanced landscaping for shading purposes. It can include adding additional trash receptacles, areas for bike parking, and possibly additional lighting and cameras. The last recommendation under this grouping of improvements is parking consolidation. So I'm going to kind of use the next slide to help explain the parking consolidation recommendation. Next slide, please. So before we dive into the operational improvements, I want to take a moment to really talk about the recommendation as it relates to parking consolidation. As many of you may know, over the years, we have heard the desire to have a centralized parking structure in downtown. The consultant group, along with city staff, took that into consideration, and that discussion does take place within the document. If the city were to pursue parking lot consolidation, what it would be looking at is two things. Most easily, they would be looking at taking some of the outer parking lots that you currently see on your screen and perhaps selling them for future uses. Perhaps we can include additional development in downtown. And the sale of those lots could go towards the funding of a future parking structure. Now, I would like to note that as of now, there is no demonstrated need for a parking facility. That's not to say if the downtown becomes very prosperous over the upcoming years, that may change. I would like to note, if at some point in the future, the city were to pursue a parking structure, there would be some other issues to contend with at that point in time. First, we would have to look at selling some of those outer lots in order to raise some of the funding necessary to support such a structure. However, there may be a shortfall in terms of the funding necessary to create that garage. Assuming we can acquire enough funding, the next step would be finding the locations large enough and centralized enough to meet the needs of not only the parking needs at that time, but also the desired needs of the businesses. As of right now, the majority of business in downtown, as well as the parking, occurs north of Mason Street. If the city were to look at a parking structure sometime in the future, most likely that parking structure would occur north of Mason Street, but that would increase the amount of walking time that someone would have to do from any of the outer areas within downtown. This could be seen as a bit of a constraint to some of the outer located businesses. Those businesses perhaps south of Mason Street, north of East Monte Vista. So I just wanted to note that we have heard the concerns and the desires of some of the public as it relates to of the parking structure. But it is not warranted at this point in time. So instead, we're going to be looking at a series of recommendations that might be more easily implementable in the nearer future. So with that, I'm going to move into the recommendations that fall under the operational improvement. So the idea behind the operational improvements is to make the most of the city's existing public parking lots. This is something that's quite feasible because it does not require acquiring any additional land. It really focuses on how we improve how we use the lots. Some of the things that we could do in order to improve the way the lots are currently used is to figure out ways and areas that could provide better curbside management as well as vehicle sharing opportunities. When we mention curbside management, what we're really referencing is providing areas for quick pickup and drop off. So this would be able to address new parking trends, such as the use of Uber and Lyft. Other things that we can do is we understand through the parking study that was done earlier in the process, that there's a high desirability for people to want to park in the most centralized lots. In this case, the vast majority of people prefer to park in lot 4. That's the one in front of the Solano County Library, and lot 7. That's the triangle lot behind Merchant and Main and the Cal Hawaii building. What we could do here, and it is part of our recommendations, is we could look at amending and changing the parking limits that are signed in these 2 lots. The idea behind the recommendations in the document is to make these prime lots more available for visitors into the downtown. When I use the term visitors, it's a widespread term. It really references anyone who comes into downtown, whether it be just as a tourist or if it were to be customers or clients. One way to do this is to sign the majority of these 2 lots for short-term parking. The term short-term parking applies to those parking areas that are limited to no more than 4 hours in duration. In exchange for this, what we would do is we would shift the need for longer-term parking, that parking that's really desired by business owners and employees, to some of the outer lots. That's what this map is really showing you. We're showing how we would like to shift the demand for long-term parking. That is those parking spaces that permits more than 4 hours in duration. Shift it from the 2 lots, which are key and most important for the visitor to downtown, and shift those to the outer lots. The recommendations are encouraging us to encourage people via education and signage to let people know that there's additional overflow parking and there's enough long-term parking in the other lots. So in the case of lot 4, we'd really want to direct people who are seeking long-term parking into lots 2 and 3. And for the areas seeking long-term parking in lot 7, we would want to be looking at directing them towards lots 11, 13, 8, and 9. Now, I know this isn't ideal for everyone involved, especially some of the business owners and the employees who really do depend on longer-term parking. We have begun some discussions with business owners who have continued to share this concern with us. And it's important to note that there is a real concern about public safety and just a feeling of being comfortable. In order to encourage people to park in the outer lots, we understand that we need to address the safety component that has been brought to our attention. As the Planning Commission may be aware, or they may remember, we did adopt our downtown connectivity and streetscape design plan earlier this year. As part of that document, we had looked at ways and we identified strategies that would do exactly what I just mentioned. We would be addressing the comfortability of pedestrians and bicyclists while also addressing the safety concerns expressed by the public at large as it relates to downtown. Some of those improvements would include additional lighting, better landscaping. It's important to provide landscaping not only for comfort in terms of providing shade, but it's also important to choose the right landscaping to ensure that there's an easy way to view your surrounding areas. Other improvements, they're kind of tied into those capital improvements. They would include improving landscaping not only within the parking lots themselves, but also along the pathway to and from those parking lots. It's very important that people feel comfortable on hot days, such as now, as well as those days that we have other inclement weather. One way to do that is to provide additional shade cover. Other ways we could encourage people, numerous people hopefully, to walk from these outer parking lots into downtown is to make the walk more enjoyable. One way to do that is to employ those capital improvements we had quickly gone over. That would include things such as the additional lighting, the landscaping, but it would also include things like improving the signage so people know exactly how far they have to walk at any given time. But it also would include doing things such as providing benches and trash receptacles. Okay, other improvements. Want to make sure I get them all. There's quite a few. I should note, in order for this idea to work, we would have to include some form of focused parking enforcement. Parking enforcement, as identified within this document, would include really focusing on those areas where the parking demand is high. So the document does recommend that parking enforcement be used to patrol lots 4 and 7, as well as the on-street parking on Main Street. Another way that we can improve parking as a whole downtown is to pursue additional shared parking agreements with private property owners who have parking lots on their properties. As many people know, we have a lot of parking lots downtown that aren't always full, and as things exist right now, after 5 p.m., a lot of those lots are completely vacant. So this recommendation would require the city to reach out to its property owners to see whether or not there would be an opportunity for the public to utilize these parking lots during those off hours. Next slide, please. So the last set of recommendations have to do with policies. These are things that the city could do to further improve parking downtown through the implementation of policies and regulations as they reside within our zoning code. So a couple of things that the document recommends is reviewing and considering the permanent allowance of the city's outdoor dining program for downtown. Now, I understand some people might be wondering why we're talking about our outdoor dining program as part of a parking recommendation document. The reason for this is kind of twofold. First, we currently have a pilot program downtown that has been approved by the City Council through the duration of 2020. As part of this approved project, the outdoor dining program, we are allowing restaurants to use either existing parking lots or city public open space, or in some cases, the actual street, in order to provide additional outdoor dining options. So we are currently taking away some parking along Main Street, but this is a great opportunity to see how that works for downtown, and should it be desired by both the city and the property owner. Another step in the parking recommendations is to determine exactly how many parking spaces the city could consider conversion to permanent outdoor dining. So another word for permanent outdoor dining would be a parklet. Other policy recommendations that are being made include looking at and restricting freight loading times downtown. Staff has noted on numerous occasions many freight trucks making deliveries during the peak hour of the day, which is the noon hour. Not only does this impede parking in some of these parking lots, it does restrict the usage of some of the parking spaces, but it also poses a problem when some of these delivery vehicles double park along some of the narrower streets downtown, including Main Street. When we have double parking occurring downtown during this very busy part of the day, it does present a potential safety issue. It's extremely difficult for cars to go around these freight vehicles, and just as importantly, if not more so, our fire department has a very difficult time getting around double parked vehicles. In fact, it's my understanding that some of our larger fire vehicles cannot go around some of these double parked vehicles. So under this recommendation, the city could look to employ a very common tactic used by neighboring cities, and that is simply to sign downtown that would prohibit deliveries to be made during any determined time. Now, with any policies, we can always write in some exemptions, but that would be subject to another process just to make sure that we're not compromising the overall goals of downtown. Other recommendations include ensuring that we have consistent off-street design parking standards for all parking lots, both public and private. This makes it a little easier for visitors to downtown to, one, identify where the parking lots are located, and two, to feel more comfortable once they're in their parking lots because they're all very similar. Another recommendation did look into price parking. Under this recommendation, this would require someone to pay in order to use some of the more highly desirable lots, either throughout the day or during specified time periods. At this point in time, and given the current parking demands for downtown, this recommendation is not being recommended right now. However, being that the downtown specific plan is a long-range plan, not likely to build out for many, many decades, we did want to include it within your list of recommendations. It is something that the city may want to revisit sometime in the future should the downtown become more economically vibrant in terms of its activities. Last, we have the recommendation to look at reducing infill parking regulations. Under this recommendation, we would not necessarily require new businesses coming into downtown to provide additional parking. As many people downtown can attest, it can be very difficult to provide additional parking, especially on some of the smaller lots. So if the city were to approve reduced infill parking regulations, we would heavily rely on shared parking agreements, not only between the city and private property owners, but also amongst the private property owners themselves. Other cities have this policy, and they also have related policies as it relates to reducing infill parking. Some of those recommendations, some of those policies include having new businesses paying an in lieu parking fee that would hopefully be used to finance additional parking improvements elsewhere in downtown. Next slide, please. So I just include this slide because I want to let everyone know that this is not the first time we have given this presentation. This presentation was given in some form or another to the Downtown Vacaville Business Improvement District last week on the 11th. It was again given last Thursday on the 13th. That meeting was recorded and is currently available for viewing on the Let's Talk Vacaville website. It does go more in depth than the recommendations I mentioned tonight. As you know, we're currently in front of the Planning Commission now. Tonight's meeting is just another opportunity for both the Planning Commissioners as well as the public to provide any comments or thoughts they may have on the proposed recommendation. And as I mentioned earlier, whatever ends up in this document will be used to inform the downtown specific plan. There will still be some opportunities to comment on whatever makes it into the draft downtown specific plan, but anything we can address now would be very helpful as we move forward. As such, the public comment period on this document is still open. That public comment period ends this Thursday at 5 p.m. So that will be on August 20th. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to close this out with reminding everyone that everything we do pertaining to the downtown specific plan can be found on the city's public outreach website, letstalkvacaville.com. Just click on the graphic showing downtown specific plan, and you'll know everything that's coming up, what has occurred, and all documents that have been published to date. I would also like to announce to the Planning Commission as well as the public that we recently made a decision for all upcoming documents to be published. They'll be very similar to the one you've seen tonight. We are going to start doing pre-recorded meetings and placing them on this website. The idea behind that is to provide people an overview of the documents we are asking them to review. And hopefully this will help stimulate public comment and questions as we continue to move through the downtown specific plan process. That concludes my presentation, and I most certainly welcome questions. Oh, forgive me. I should note, we did receive one very well thought out comment letter from a business owner in downtown. She is the owner of a beauty salon within the Cal Hawaii building. She is the unofficial representative of many small businesses that are located adjacent to the Triangle parking lot, Lot 7. She and I have been talking about the concerns of many of these small business owners. And given their location, most of their concerns are in reference to Lot 7. And we are looking at trying to find a fine balance between meeting the needs of the business owner as well as their clients and or their customers. So perhaps we can get a little more into that as we start asking questions. I did see that she is participating in tonight's meeting. I just want to let the Planning Commission know that she and I have been in pretty consistent communication, and we had a wonderful discussion on additional recommendations that we can take into consideration. So with that, I do welcome any comments that the Planning Commissioners may have.
Great, thank you, Tyra. And even though this is not an action item, we will be opening it up for public comment, but this is our typical process. First, we open it up to the commissioners to see if they have any questions or comments they'd like at this time. So now would be a good time for any of the commissioners who wish to participate to raise their hand or to otherwise speak up with the question you would have for Tyra or a comment to make. And at this point, I see Commissioner Alan Johnson. So go ahead, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Tyra, one quick question. I noticed on slide 13 you had a picture of the scooters. Do we have a component in this plan to address that issue?
Tyra, if you're answering, we can't hear.
Sorry about that. I just realized that. My mistake. So what I was mentioning is the document we're discussing tonight, the parking recommendations document, does not specifically address scooters. However, we do have numerous documents that are being created and or have been created that will be used to inform the creation of the downtown specific plan. We are considering the use of scooters downtown. So if you have any questions or comments you would like us to take note of regarding those, tonight would be an appropriate time to do so.
Thank you very much.
I don't see any of the other commissioners with their hands up. So I'm going to go ahead and open things to the public. And the first person I'm going to call on, go ahead.
Bob, can you hear me? This is Commissioner Beaumont.
Yes, Commissioner Beaumont. Do you have the last three numbers 697?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Then
I'm
we're
sorry,
still in Commissioner. Oh, sorry, your name didn't show up on the list. Go ahead, Doug.
Well, I got kicked off the Zoom meeting, so I had to phone in. So Tyra, thanks so much for the update. I just have one concern that I've expressed before, and that's with the Hickory lot. I think it's a red herring that makes the parking downtown look a lot better than it should. I think until we get the Davis Street improvements and some mode of transportation to get people to the downtown, that it shouldn't be considered. No one's going to park there. That's 251 spaces that, to me, are not going to be used for a long time. And I think it just used the whole look of the lot 1 through 13 is what actually is the downtown parking, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tyra, do you have those occupancy numbers run without the Hickory lot counted in?
We did not, no.
Okay. And my other comment would be that the Hickory lot is a commuter lot that has between a 30 to 40% occupancy rate anyway. So you don't have really 251 parking spaces available as it is. That's my only other comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Beaumont. Do any of the other commissioners have comments that they'd like to make or questions for Tyra at the moment? You will have another opportunity later on. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and go to the public. The first name I see is Wendy and Travis Brecken. So if you would go ahead and ask the question or make the comment that you have, please.
Hi, this is Wendy Brecken. I just wanted to thank Tyra for a very well thought out presentation, and I would also be interested in the Hickory lot, if that could be maybe deleted from the equation to see what the numbers look like then after that. But also, I wanted to understand better what the private sharing, I can't remember what you called it, what private public parking sharing lots where I guess you get into agreements. The city would have agreements with the private owners for parking. What do those look like? I mean, does the city have to pay for that, or what does that agreement usually look like?
Okay, thank you for your comment.
Mm-hmm.
So as of right now, to my knowledge, the only shared parking agreement the city is involved in with a private property owner is the property owner who owns the former AAA building. That's the building located at the corner of Davis Street and Mason. It's 555 Mason Street. Now, this one came about a little differently. Once upon a time, the city owned that property, and as part of the agreement that was made between the property owner, the current property owner, and the city at that point in time was they could develop the site, but as part of that negotiation, the city would be allowed to use that as public parking during the hours that the business wasn't in operation. So as it stands right now, the public can use that parking lot after 6 p.m., Monday through Friday, and on weekends. So that's an official agreement. Now, as part of the recommendations, we are proposing two types of potential parking agreements. One would be similar to the one I just described. Under that idea, the city would partner or come up with an agreement with private property owners to allow the public to use their parking lot during off hours. The other proposal would be between just private property owners. There is a possibility to allow more than one business to use one parking lot. To be honest, I don't know what those agreements look like. I have never worked on one of those. This may be uncharted water for the city of Vacaville, but it would all start with whether or not we want to pursue this recommendation, and then the city would reach out to the private property owners to see whether or not there was any interest in this proposal.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Ms. Brecken?
Yes, thank you very much. I mean,
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, I just think I like the idea of, I guess, trying to avoid paying for a parking structure. At the same time, I've heard businesses say that would be the best, I guess, way to get people downtown to have a parking structure. So I don't know what comments you've heard from businesses on that.
I can tell you that the people I've spoken to who have mentioned the desire for a parking structure were taken aback by me asking them whether or not they'd be willing to pay for that structure to be constructed and for its ongoing maintenance. So once we start talking numbers, the level of desire seems to be waning.
Tyra, do we have an idea of what the cost is for constructing and maintaining the structure, kind of on a per space basis?
Once upon a time we did. Please don't quote me on this, but it'll at least give you an idea of the magnitude. Once upon a time, I was told in order to meet all the very stringent seismic requirements of California, one parking space within a parking structure can cost upwards of $30,000.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then the next person we have does not have a name that shows up. The last three digits on their phone number are 488. So you have the floor. Go ahead and ask any question or make any statement you'd like.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. This is Teresa Stout. And Ms. Banks, I think you have just done such a wonderful job on this. Very, very thorough. Yet, I'm still discouraged. I'm as discouraged as the downtown folks and even, you know, and I understand what Commissioner Beaumont was saying. I think a lot of us really realize that we need more parking downtown. And part of the deal is, I mean, the biggest part for me is for the employees, because we have vacancies downtown right now, and it's going to be rough to fill those. Food establishments could, you know, downtown, lunchtime, you know, make the money and stuff, but they're not really that able to, because you have to try and find parking while you have your hour off from work. And so it kind of boggles my mind a little bit, because the employees, say, have to be there from, say, 12 until 8, 9 o'clock. But if a restaurant closes at 9 o'clock, the employees are there to almost 10 or 11. And that's just the businesses that close at 9. And those employees shouldn't have to walk several blocks to get to their car, because it's the wrong time of the night. It's the wrong, you know, it could be inclement weather. It could be all these different reasons. And so that becomes extremely discouraging, I think, for them. And as for some of the other business owners, because there's a lot of hair salons and such down there, you know, when we got to go get our hair cut, boom, we want something there, in, out, done. And so there's kind of this, the long-term, short-term. We have vacancies downtown, and now we have that change out in the high school. How is that as well going to affect the equation? Because that high school would have more, eventually, when kids come back to school, have more students than the former high school. Thank you.
Okay, I can try to address some of those comments. First and foremost, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and concerns. I can tell you that they're pretty much on par with all the comments we've received to date. So some of the ways that we are trying to address those concerns is, let me see, I'm trying to think which way to start. So just today, as I mentioned, I had a further discussion with a salon owner downtown. And in addition to speaking with her, I have spoken with other salon owners downtown throughout the duration of this project. And most of them have noted they need at minimum 4-hour parking for their customers in order to have the services provided. As it stands right now, we are looking at providing 4-hour parking in these parking lots. So hopefully that's going to meet the needs of the salons. My understanding that it is the 2-hour parking that causes the most issue. In terms of people having to drive around to find parking spots during their limited during their limited lunch hour, we understand this is very much a concern. We've also noted that based on numerous discussions with the public at our various outreach events, that most people within the city of Vacaville believe we only have 2 to 3 public parking lots located downtown. As you can imagine, those are the most highly desired parking lots. So with that, we realize that the city has a big job ahead of itself by informing people, making them aware that there is ample parking, but it might just be right around the corner. That's where our wayfinding recommendation comes in addition to improving the walk to and from those parking lots. Let's see, employee safety. This one was not specifically addressed in this document, but I'm happy to note that I discussed this today with that business owner who's actually on today's call. She raised the same concern, and it's a very valid concern. We do want to make sure that everyone is feeling safe, especially in the night hours. So one option that we could add to this document is to not enforce parking during certain times. This is a very common tactic in surrounding cities. I know the city of Davis does this. And those highly desirable lots, in this case, lots 7 and 4, they would mainly be dedicated to short-term parking. However, should the city decide, we could inform people through signage that parking would not be enforced after a certain period of time. Another way to say that, the city may decide that we're not going to do any parking enforcement after 6 p.m. This would provide employees and business owners the opportunity to move their cars a little earlier in the evening and park them there through the duration of their shift, thus placing them closer to their place of business. Let's see. Vacancies. Yes, we do have quite a few vacancies downtown. The document we're discussing tonight does not go into that. However, our parking study did take into consideration the amount of vacancies and the existing land use as it is today, as well as what we are foreseeing in the near future, as well as probably, I think we went out 20 years into the future. So depending on what new parking and vehicular related technologies are out there, it has been determined that there should be ample parking. Now that said, we understand things change. This document does include a final recommendation, and that would be for the city to monitor any recommendations within 1 year of their implementation. It is not the city's intent to do anything downtown that's going to further exacerbate an existing issue. The idea behind this is we have parking downtown, but it's not being used to accessibility, and there are definitely some improvements that can be made. We're going to do our best to address those. Should they work? Wonderful. And if they don't, we'll have to reassess and perhaps change them further. Lastly, the relocation of Buckingham High School downtown. Unfortunately, I wasn't prepared to answer this question tonight. The city has been in contact with the Vacaville Unified School District in regards to the relocation of Buckingham downtown. At one point in time, they did provide us with information pertaining to their enrollment numbers, as well as the number of students who are currently driving. From what I recall, and I'm going back a few months here, it's my understanding that the vast majority of their students do not drive. They are dropped off and picked up from that location. And then the school district is currently they're currently working on ensuring that they have adequate parking in the parking lot located adjacent to the school itself. It's mainly accessed off East Main Street. I'm sorry, let me say that again. It's accessed off East Monte Vista. They want to ensure that they can get maximum parking up there to ensure that they meet the parking needs of the staff of the school. Sorry, I can't give you any hard numbers on that. That is something that we can revisit in a future public comment meeting.
Thank you, Tyra. I next see Christine Sagan, hopefully I pronounced the name right, has raised their hand. So go ahead with your comments or questions.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tyra, for addressing a lot of the things that we talked about today. And I'm just going to address more of the Lot 7 parking because that is where I work. So I know the parking situation there, as well as I've spoke to the 40 businesses surrounding Lot 7 about some of the issues that we're having. I feel like everyone gets the feeling we got the short end of the stick in the parking lots because we are the only lot that has 2-hour parking. A lot of our businesses are one-on-one services. So with most of the lot being 2-hour parking, we have to lock our doors every 2 hours, which is taking us away from our customers and our services that we offer, which in turn loses money. And then the other thing that you had mentioned was a lot of the salons are long services on a daily basis or last 2.5 to 3 hours. And so I think 4-hour parking in Lot 7 would be huge for us business owners as well as customers. We don't ever want to see customers leaving with chemicals on their head and having to drive around and look for a new parking spot. The other thing that a lot of the business owners thought was a great solution for us having to lock our doors is a parking permit. Something just saying downtown parking, 8 hours, allowing us to be able to give our customers all of our time and not have to be moving our parking situation throughout our day. And I think that's all that I have for now.
Tyra, are there any of those that you wish to respond to?
Ms. Fagan and I have been having constant communication on this topic, and she's provided some great ideas that we are further considering for inclusion in this document.
And I don't see anybody else in the public attendees list with their hands raised. So I'm going to go ahead and close it down for the public portion. As we get ready to wrap up, a couple of comments I have. One, Tyra, something I've seen demonstrated tonight and throughout this is staff's clear willingness to try and go out and work with the public and the business owners. And I think that's key in making this document what I think is a pretty good doc. It's got some good suggestions, a good mix of both the physical and the operational approaches. One specific comment I have is for anything we're doing physical, whether it's signs that say, 10 parking spaces open this way, they're electronic, whatever it is, we have to have a commitment to maintenance of that in there. Similar if we put a bike path or something in. I'm specifically thinking we've got a bike path up in Browns Valley that the pavement on that is so bad I won't ride my bike on it anymore because there's so many roots have raised it up, and my wife fell over one of them when she was out running yesterday. So it doesn't do much good to build something that we don't maintain. When it starts to look run down, it's even worse than if we hadn't done it. In downtown, we'll have the same thing. If we put in signs to show where parking is, and then we don't maintain when the lights go out or something like that, it looks worse than if we hadn't done it in the first place. So when we get the final document of the downtown specific plan, I think a funding and maintenance program will be very important. Clearly that applies to any structure. It's nice to have a structure, but it's not nice to have to pay for a structure and then maintain it and maybe have security. So that'll, I think, be a very important component in whatever we end up doing. I like it as it is. I'm looking forward to the final document and this being worked into it. Before I finalize, I'm going to ask if any of the other commissioners have comments that they would like to make. If so, now is the time to indicate your interest.
Me.
Commissioner Aldrich.
The picture of the scooters concerns me. I don't know that our sidewalks downtown are wide enough to do benches, pedestrians, parklets, and scooters. It concerns me that we're looking for an accident waiting to happen. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay, thanks, Jen. With that, I think our portion on parking is done, and we are ready to go to item 7B, which is the biotechnology initiative update from Mr. Baderi and Burris. I don't know which one of you is leading the discussion, but now's the time to so lead.
Thank you very much. So this is a presentation to the Commission on the biotechnology and advanced manufacturing strategy. The presentation is going to be provided by Don Burris, the city's Director of Economic Development Services, and Matt Gardner with Innovation Consultants, who's assisting Don on the preparation of the strategy. And just by way of background, we wanted to bring you this update on the strategy to follow up on the Commission's review of 2 industrial buildings at last month's Planning Commission meeting, where you did have some questions about wanting to be sure and facilitate good, healthy economic development in the city's industrial park. So I think Mr. Burris and Mr. Gardner will go over this for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Fred. Good evening, Chair McCauley and commissioners. Don Burris here, your Director of Economic Development Services. As Fred said, my colleague Matt Gardner, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the California Technology Council, just wanted to give you all an update on the biotechnology and advanced manufacturing strategies. This has been going on now since June of 2019, and I wasn't sure if U.S. commissioners had been involved in the process or heard much about it, so I jumped at this opportunity to bring you all into the fold. So as way of just general background, this all started probably in February of 2019. At that time, I was the economic development manager for the city of Vacaville. I had been doing some business retention work with our local companies. And as I talked with a few of the biotechnology companies, they had all asked why the city had stopped our biotech attraction efforts. I had shared with them at the time that, we had gone many years without a economic development manager, and that I was also interested in seeing if there was any real effort there that we could employ to attract more biotechnology companies. Having said that, we pulled together our first industry focus group, where we pulled together all of our biotech companies in the city of Vacaville, as well as some throughout Solano County and even in South San Francisco, which basically is the birthplace of biotechnology. At that time, we had also reached out to Matt. Matt and I have a relationship that spans some 20 years now. Matt was very integral in helping the city of San Jose create their biotechnology center there, which was an incubator for biotech companies. I asked Matt to come on board. Matt facilitated the meeting, and what we heard from all of our biotechnology companies was a resounding yes, that there was more industry there to be had and that could actually be brought to Vacaville. After having that conversation, we did go to our city manager and talk to a few members of the city council and the mayor about really going forward with a real strategy that we can use to attract these companies. That strategy began on June 25th of 2019, and Matt has completed phase 1, and we are actually in phase 2 of the strategy. And I wanted to make sure that we could get in front of you this evening to share with you what we have accomplished so far and what our next steps are. So I will now turn the presentation over to Matt. I know that you see that the slides there's several slides, almost 35. It is not our intentions to go through all 35 slides. Basically, we'll go through the first 10, but we wanted you to have all of the slides because they do give quite a bit of detail on how the strategy works. And we thought this could be something that you could review at your leisure. So having said that, Matt Gardner.
Thanks, Don. Commissioner, it's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I think you'll note that this slide deck was written to accompany the original strategy that was submitted to council just before March 1st. And so I'll make a couple of observations here about how things have changed in the unusual business circumstances of the coronavirus. But largely, we've proceeded along these same work streams since. Next slide, please. So we obviously had an excellent starting point, a very strong mix of industrial users in Vacaville to work from, consulted with the state's manufacturing agency that's sort of got a statewide mandate from the U.S. Department of Commerce to assist manufacturers in looking at where the city's strengths are. Next slide, please. And obviously in the life sciences, you drive by this industry every day. You may not appreciate that that major anchor tenant, it happens to be the largest biologics manufacturing plant in the world. And I'll just make a distinction for you so that you can appreciate why Vacaville is so special to the industry. There's a separation in the industry between biotech and pharma. Pharma is really the manufacturer of chemical compounds that you get served in pills, as opposed to biotech, which is usually a biologic, a vial, something wet, maybe delivered intravenously or through other means. But the nature of a wet product is a very different, highly specialized, highly regulated, clean room environment for manufacturing. That makes that Genentech facility very special. And it's not alone. As you appreciate, the decision locations, the site selection decisions of originally Alza, which became the Janssen facility, and Chiron, which became Novartis and is now RxD Pharma, were significant beginning in the 1980s. So Vacaville's had this reputation in the industry. There's an awareness about the concentration of these locations in the industry. And that actually helps us with thinking through the marketing of Vacaville a great deal. Next slide, please. So Don and the team had crafted this kind of basic educational material to take to a few industry events. Took this to, I think, the annual Biotechnology Industry Convention in Philadelphia in 2019, a few other meetings as well. And it really speaks to the beginning point for where we get glowing feedback from folks about why Vacaville is recognized. And among those things are really the existing workforce program, the partnership that we have with Solano College that already produces highly specialized graduates in biomanufacturing training. It's a very unique program nationally. There are only a few like it. And the fact that Solano College actually has not just an associate's degree, but a baccalaureate that's so specialized in biomanufacturing makes it a very unique jewel that has been noted by the industry. In fact, industry stealing those students even before they graduate. So we've now seen industry, not just the local based companies, but companies from 100 miles away hiring those students. And so that's a sign not only that the training program works, but that also we would have more opportunity if we had more employers next door to the Solano College program. Next slide, please. I'll go ahead, next slide. So we took a look at high value adding industries, and we were really looking here to play from strength. So without reinventing wheels, which of these industries are present in Vacaville that we could use as a basis for thinking through how to attract more of the same. Some industries generate more induced jobs and supplier jobs than others. And so we looked at those as being worth, especially thinking through as some of these larger projects may begin to deliver the city toward full build out on its industrial lands. So without changing the mix, if everything stays where it is today, are there things that we'd want to do adjacent to that Genentech facility in Kaiser and RXD and Janssen that make sense, have a high impact, create good jobs, and are anchored in the community? And that was the beginning point. Next slide, please. This is just a reminder that that Genentech facility is the largest in the world. It's interesting that this particular ranking service magically puts the Samsung facility in Korea ahead of it by indexing it as opposed to absolute value. So we have a pretty good indication of the millions of liters that Genentech possesses there being number one in the world. What that means for retail value is probably not as much as it means in wholesale industry value. Everyone in the industry is aware of this facility, and that will go a long way to creating a receptive audience for new marketing. Go ahead. Next slide. Thank you. So we observed something at the BioConvention in Philadelphia that we thought suggested to us that we needed to change the starting message. And that was that for those that didn't know or who might not be on the side of the industry that is intimately familiar with Genentech's facility or what have you, we'd lose the first few minutes of every conversation having to explain where Vacaville is. If you're not from California, you've never driven to Tahoe or done any of those things, or you didn't go to school in the East Bay and you're familiar with it anyway. If you grew up in Philadelphia or Boston, you just might not know. And that time we felt was precious, and it was mostly lost in those conversations. So we wanted to change the nature of that introduction. Go ahead, next slide. We really saw an opportunity to turn that conversation into, this is the largest biologics headquarters in the world, and it has been since the 1980s. And that, to us, sort of restated the proposition into one that is acknowledging where Vacaville is unique in the industry and how it's already working in one of the categories of manufacturing that generally you'd classify as advanced manufacturing to begin with as a world leader, an established world leader with the highly specialized training programs already in place and functioning that few locations in the world would have. We also felt like that would sort of change the conversation with the recipient, that instead of having to explain or define things for the first few minutes, we actually might be putting the onus on them a little bit. If they didn't know where the headquarters of biomanufacturing is, they ought to know, and they should look for more information with us. And so we started from that basic idea of trying to reposition Vacaville as the world leader. Go ahead, next slide. I'm going to turn over to Payman here to talk about one of the aspects of this work that we think creates a very unique marketing advantage for the city as well.
Thanks, Matt. This is Payman, city planner with the current planning division. So sort of in concert with what Matt and Don are working on, one of the important questions will ultimately be, well, once we choose Vacaville, what's the process that we have to go through? And so what we've tried to put together is really a biotechnology fast track policy. And this is really to give that confidence to folks that their process is going to be quick, on time, and probably faster than hopefully a lot of other communities they might be considering. So we sort of broken it down into different sections. First one being staff. For a biotechnology project, we would basically have our staff make that priority number one. So there would be, assigned staff from building, planning, utilities and public works, fire and police departments. Basically, our development review team would be leading this effort to get their entitlement review done. Matt and Don, through their work on the marketing aspect and site locations, are putting good information for folks to consider Vacaville. Once we get beyond that point, again, we're going into the entitlement review process. And certainly, we do have the experience working with Genentech, with RxD Nova, and other folks in Vacaville in terms of what their needs are, what their schedules are typically. So we do have good experience in that sector, and we feel that that puts us, again, ahead of other communities in terms of what we're capable to do for the review process. What we've identified as a priority for development review, not only for biotech, but really it starts with biotech, is to really make the process as quick as we can by meeting the code and CEQA requirements that we have as well. What we've sort of started with is a review process that's 90 to 100 days. Maybe a little bit longer, but most likely a lot shorter in terms of what our experience has been with projects that come in. We would sit down with them before they submit, identify all the sort of red flag areas that we've seen in the past, and then get them that approval in that time period. After that approval period, we go into our building permits, and this is where, again, I think our staff really sets us apart from other communities in that you all know Jay Salas, our chief building official, has a lot of experience working with Genentech and other biotech facilities in Vacaville, and has really worked with their design and construction teams to figure out what do they need, and we work backwards from that timeline. And he is certainly capable of leading that, as he has for the last almost 30 years in Vacaville. And so he is capable of putting the timelines together, identifying what the important items are and which ones aren't important in terms of timing for obtaining those building permits. And the last part being inspection and post-approval support. And this is, again, something that also is involved planning to some degree, where we are we have planners that are contacts for certain facilities. I have a lot of experience working with Genentech. So that gives folks a comfort that, look, if we have some idea about an expansion or something that we want to do differently, they just call us. And I would say 100% of the time, we're able to find ways to get their process, get their project done in a way that's really beneficial for timing purposes, and having that confidence and reliability on when they can get their projects done. So that's what we've tried to put together as sort of a companion to what Matt and Don are working on in terms of choosing Vacaville for for these types of facilities. And we feel this does, again, set us apart from other communities in terms of our commitment to processing really the important permitting requirements for their facilities in Vacaville. So,
Chair McCauley, I have a question for you. And looking at number 3, the entitlement process, it looks like we've got, the zoning, the specific plans, all those things solidly set, and the staff that knows how to work them. Do we have a master EIR that these projects can rely upon, or do they need to do their individual project CEQA? And do we have something in enough detail that they can simply reaffirm that and off they go? What's the environmental status?
Sure, that's a good question. So I will say recently we approved a project called Midway Commerce Center, which is roughly 1.7 million square feet of warehouse space. And we approved that project in less than 3 months. And the reason we're able to do that is we relied on the general plan EIR. And the general plan EIR, in terms of the business parks, industrial parks, has laid everything out and evaluated the way it's always been. So there are no surprises when it comes to the environmental review. Now, there is certainly documentation that we have to go through, such as a modified initial study to reaffirm everything that the general plan identified and sort of double check things. But that is a process that is, in our experience, we've had, if you recall, Alamo mixed use project also did a modified initial study. And that's really, we work with our CEQA consultants to limit that to about a month, if that. But the guiding document is the general plan EIR. That is what we rely on. And so the 90 to 100 days, when I would say it could be long, it could be shorter. Obviously, we don't know what those specific projects are, but there are a number of exemptions also that are available to us that would make that process shorter. But the big document that we rely on is the general plan EIR.
Great, thank you. I'm going to see if any of the other commissioners have questions right now before you proceed. Don't see, Vice Chair Fortney, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Payman, Matt, Don, perfect. Great presentation. Love to hear what's coming down the pipeline. Job creation, job creation, job creation. I have a couple questions for you. I want to look at the special zoning for the biotechnology. Where are we? What's our timeline? What does that process look like?
So in terms of the zoning that's in place right now, for the most part, would accommodate the types of uses that we're anticipating. So as of now, there isn't, and Don and Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but as of now, there's no plan to change zoning or to establish any sort of overlays. What we're relying on is what we're sort of identifying here, which is our commitment in terms of a city policy to expedite these types of projects. Right now, we don't have any plans to change actual zoning to sort of identify an overlay.
Okay, I'm looking at the recommendation 3.1, which said Vacaville should consider special zoning for biotechnology as a beacon to support biotechnology industry investment. Mm-hmm. It looks like there might be something out you might be looking to do in the future in regards to the industrial park, specifically for biotechnology, that you might be able to market out there to real estate brokers out of the area or future manufacturers. That's kind of where I was asking on that question. And if it was something that the Planning Commission would need to be involved in at a decision making, or if it could be done at staff level.
Right now, the policy plans do allow staff level determinations. If we go down the path of establishing land use overlays, then certainly the Planning Commission would be a recommending body and council would be the approval authority.
Okay, perfect. And next, it looks like you guys are right on figuring out Vacaville strengths with the logistics and the manufacturing there. Some of the things specifically to the Planning Commission that may come before us, where are those holes? How are we, give us a quick update. Where are we with high user waters? We've got plenty of water, but kind of give us an update on where we are with water, sewer, high-speed data out there in that industrial park. Do we need, I know we have enough inventory of land. Do we need more spec building? Is that encouraging? I want the planning commissioners to be aware of when we see things coming down the pipeline that might be part of this in the future. So if you could help me out there with giving us some details. Thank you.
Definitely. Commissioner Courtney, Don Burris here.
Thanks, Don.
So yes, we actually have identified our water and sewer capacity, and very specifically, we're talking about the Vacaville Business Park and the 109 acres that is presently owned by the Spanos family, right along 80 between Kaiser and Genentech, just to give you all the visual of where we're talking. So we have identified that that under the current constraints, we could potentially have another campus the size of Genentech on that property and not be subject to having to upgrade any of our public infrastructure. However, if we look at total build out of all that acreage, we do need to do some upgrades for some of the pipes and the pumps for the lift stations. Now, having shared that with you, we have an opportunity now, our federal legislators, to help with funding of that project. So we're in conversation now with the mayor and a few of our elected officials to see if we can acquire the funding so that we can be prepared for total build out. Right now, we're thinking that might look like about 3.5 million square foot of manufacturing, wet labs, incubator space, medical device manufacturing, and even maybe some medical office, so that entire area will become a biotechnology or biomanufacturing campus.
Perfect. Mr. Don Burris, you're sexy for saying that. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. I think there's one other aspect we'd like to cover as well. And Matt, please feel free to jump in, but we wanted to share with you that we are in the final rounds of solidifying our nonprofit organization, which will be kind of like the clearinghouse for all things biotechnology in Vacaville. So think of it as kind of like a sales office, so that when companies come into town, we have a place to take them. We have a place to introduce them to all of the community stakeholders, which would include most likely UC Davis. We are in conversations now, very close to signing an agreement with Solano Community College. So we are in those final rounds of establishing this new nonprofit center, and so excited about our advisory board that we've been working with as well. So Matt, if you'd like to share anything more.
Yeah, I would just say, I think, especially thank you, Vice Chair Fortney, for that question. There are about somewhere between 20 and 30 recommendations in the original plan, and I think important for you to know, we're working on just about all of them in parallel. And so, as Don mentioned, we've had a long running conversation with industry about what they need, and that's what got us into the conversations about water and broadband. So appreciate that those things have all taken place in parallel tracks. The industry response has just been outstanding. And so there are quite a few balls in the air still, with a lot happening. And I mentioned earlier that COVID has obviously set us back a little bit. It's set us back, for example, on the interest in using the convening power that we would have to bring specialty groups together. That obviously is an interruption, but there's such a unique position for Vacaville in things like cold chain and biologic manufacturing that'll come back. And so we'll try and come back to that convening power and use it as a way to reach out and invite industry from around the world to come and see what Vacaville is all about. So we're obviously excited about the launch of the nonprofit and this program overall, but things like that, I think, give us reason to think you'll continue to see news come from this. That's all I've got for you.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Fortney, I'm happy.
Commissioner Beaumont has his hands up, so go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, thanks for the briefing. I appreciate it. I used to live in Raleigh, and there was a place back there called the Research Triangle, and you knew exactly what it was. You didn't have to say Raleigh or Durham or anything else. And we call our place Industrial Park. Have you ever thought of naming it like something like Vacaville's Research Square or something, because it's in a square, something that would be more pizzazzy than Industrial Park?
Yes, actually, we have, Commissioner. We've been discussing possibly having a corridor sign on Highway 80 that identifies this as maybe, and we haven't come up with a name, so please forgive me, I'm just throwing things out, but it could be the Northern California Biotechnology, cluster, The name for our center right now, for the nonprofit center, would be the California Biomanufacturing Center, the CBC for short. So we are considering some signage and some marketing materials to brand Vacaville as the new home in Northern California for biomanufacturing and biotechnology. If I can take just a moment to answer the second part of Commissioner's question, Michael had asked about broadband, and as a matter of fact, we're meeting tomorrow. Staff is meeting tomorrow to discuss our fiber optics master plan. We do have a broadband node in the Vacaville Business Park. So we're going to discuss an entire master plan for not just the office parks, but also for the city tomorrow. And there actually is some funding from the federal government to help us do the actual plan, as well as acquire funds to pay for it.
Great. Thank you very much, Don.
And Don, do you have other, go ahead and finish up your presentation now if you have more slides or other things to talk about.
I think we pretty much covered the bases. We didn't want this to be death by PowerPoint tonight. We just really wanted to provide you all with an update on where we are. Things are moving along very well, and actually much quicker than we thought. We have already had quite a bit of interest in the land from several investors. So I think by the end of the year, we may have some very good news to share with everyone.
Great. And I assume that you're continuing to be integrally involved with Solano EDC.
Yes. Oh, yes. We are in conversation with Bob Burris there at the Solano EDC on a regular basis.
And before we go to ask for public input, you're talking about the broadband here. I think that really helps emphasize kind of the synergy between what we're talking about for biotech and advanced manufacturing, the rest of the community. I mean, if you're looking for what's going to help bring these businesses, it's not just what you've focused on here, but a community where the workers want to live, where the businesses want to bring their employees, or where people who grow up and go to school in Vacaville want to stay. So we've got things like schools that have enough internet connectivity that you can do online music lessons. I know my music teacher said, we need faster broadband here. And so that's the sort of synergy of working on this helps other portions of the community. What we do here with the commission for looking at the sorts, the variety, the location, the affordability of housing, I think ends up helping out what you're doing there. A good education program that the school districts can add, great partnership with the community college. And I want to really hope that we have such a partnership with the school district there. And so there's certainly things that we see that don't have this label on it, but that can help you in what you're doing. And then what you do reaches out and helps, for example, create the disposable income that the downtown needs to really thrive. So I like the fact that you're focusing here, but I know you look at a number of things in the city and how they all help each other improve. So my hats off for you on the broad work you're doing and the focus on this particular item. Thanks for the 2 minutes on the stump there. I can see if any of the other commissioners have comments or questions before we open it up to the public. Don't see any hands raised. We'll come back, but I want to see, we've got 2 members of the public are in the list. And again, I see Wendy Brecken is on the list and has raised her hand. So go ahead, Ms. Brecken.
Hi, I wanted to thank Don and Matt for a great presentation. This is very exciting. And I know I talked with Don before because I couldn't wait to hear this presentation. But one of my questions is, I don't understand why we need to create a nonprofit. I don't understand why it's just not city staff doing it. Is that, so I'll ask that question. Then also, as part of the nonprofit, what other tasks would you be doing besides attracting the businesses? Would you, as the chair mentioned, be maybe working with other schools like elementary or high school, to get them interested in specific sciences or anything like that?
Mr. Burris?
Matt, would you like to address this one?
Yeah, I could take that. I think we've set
Okay.
up the charter and bylaws of the nonprofit to. Thank you for the question. First of all, I think obviously we are interested in making sure that the community is served here and everything that comes from this strategy. So the charter and bylaws of the center have been set up to actually serve as a not only a promotional partner for the city. So obviously the investment promotion responsibility still falls on the city, but to be a support entity for that and to serve as then after that a convening body for the industry that's locally based, the things that they're thinking about and worried about, a bit of a conference center there as well. So sort of a specialty meeting space for people that are in this highly regulated industry where they like to have a sort of a clustering effect. And then to do some additional things beyond that, including, for example, serving as a training center for short course opportunities that would be less than degree or certificate programs. So obviously the degree and certificate diploma kind of programs fall on Solano College and UC Davis, but oftentimes you find 3 to 5 day courses for people who are upskilling, acquiring a module, or just adding a skill that might be an add-on to, for example, already knowing how cell culture fermentation works, but maybe needing an updated skill on the conversion to what a lot of industry is doing right now in, for example, disposable bag use in that manufacturing process. So these are often short courses. They're oftentimes 3 to 5 days. Great way for the nonprofit to add some value to academic partners by working with them and some of their what we call rock star faculty to come out and do a private sort of industry course that's sort of like exec ed or extension that also then helps sell hopefully more industry users to going into the full degree programs as well. So a lot of reasons to use the center as a way to convene industry and help the industry grow.
Ms. Brecken, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I don't see any other hands up in the meeting room here. So we'll come back then to the commissioners and see if there's any final comments before we move on to our next item. Any commissioners have comments you'd like to make right now? Don't see any hands coming up. Gentlemen, I think that was a great presentation on a very important topic. Thank you for spending a portion of your evening with us and helping us better understand where the city is going and how some of the tasks that we perform here on the commission will have a chance to fit into it in the future. If we were having a regular meeting, I'd go ahead and take a 5-minute break, but since people can get up and leave the table as they desire, and we wouldn't even know it, we don't need to do that. So we'll go on to item number 7C, which is the outdoor dining and business programs, collectively known as Vacaville al fresco. And it looks like Mr. Bavand and Mr. Padden will be making the presentation. So go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Hello again, Commission. So we briefly talked about the city's outdoor dining project or program at the last Planning Commission meeting. So we want to bring it back to you just a little bit more detail. And since we've had more folks apply for this permit, just wanted to give you an update on that. Slide. So far, we've approved 13 permit requests, and primarily those are outdoor dining, but we also had last week an approval for a business using city parking lot. And I've identified the names there, but we'll go through them one by one in this presentation. Next. So as I mentioned, 12 restaurants were approved. City sidewalks, on-street parking, and private parking lots. Sorry about the mistake on the slide there. But those are the areas that the Vacaville al fresco program really focuses on. Next. This is the application that folks fill out, and this is, since the council's action, this has been modified a little bit to really make things easier for folks and to make it, instead of having different sections that talk about what the conditions are, we just let them know that the conditions are attached and they are, obligated to comply with those. And we sort of try to make this a more a quicker process to go through rather than having a lot of information to go through. Next. So we're going to go through some pictures of folks who have applied and have received their approvals. This is Hank and Hazel's, and what we see are the outdoor dining areas that they had originally identified with their project, but then on adjoining parcel, they've included some more tables to accommodate their additional customers. Next. This is La Borgata Italian Deli, and this is one where it's downtown, and they've taken 3 to 4 parking spaces and really done a really good job aesthetically of making it a welcoming place for outdoor dining. Next. Black Bear Diner, they've taken the portion of their parking area, drive aisle, in the back area, which doesn't conflict with any parking that they have that they use with other users. So they've done a good job of that, and our understanding is they've had success here so far. Next. Clay Oven on Orange Drive, they've also identified outdoor dining, or they've placed outdoor dining in the sort of front part of their use. It's really a patio area, and they haven't so far had to use any parking spots to do that. Next. BJ's Restaurant Brewhouse. This area is right in front of the main entrance to the building. And again, what we're pretty happy with is, for the most part, businesses have not only just put out tables and chairs, but they've really done a good job of again, making it aesthetically pleasing and really an experience to sit out there, but have some landscaping, some shade and things like that. So we're pretty happy with the efforts that our business owners are making to make it the best experience they can for folks on these outdoor dining areas. Next. Black Oak Restaurant is another one that's identified really what was a drive aisle and parking area with tables and chairs, and you can see here it is pretty popular, which is good news. Next. Marilla's across the street. They took 3 spaces, and again, shade and landscaping, and this is pretty much what we, as I mentioned just a couple minutes ago, something that we're seeing a lot of business owners do, which is actually not just put tables and chairs, but make an effort to make it comfortable for folks. Next. Now, this is one that was recently approved, but this shows the 2 spaces right in front of the business that they're going to be using for their outdoor dining area. Next. This one was recently approved as well, and I was actually there over the weekend, and they've done a good job. This is, if you tell on the right picture, what was just a walkway before, they've placed some tables and chairs, and you see one right in front of the building as well. They also have identified a secondary area, which is off to the left side, about 5 or 6 parking spaces. If there is success here and they do need the additional overflow area, they would have that in 5 to 6 parking spaces. Next. So we approved one sort of master approval for Alamo Plaza, and this is for Digger's Deli. And again, we think they've done a really good job of making this a welcoming area for their outdoor patrons. Next. For Round Table Pizza, this is the area that they've identified. They haven't placed their chairs and tables yet. Next. So this area is basically for Donut Queen, Burrito Express, Jamrock Island Cuisine, and Rose Thai Garden, and also Journey Coffee. Journey Coffee has some existing outdoor area that they've been using, but this is intended to, again, just as much as they can, recover what their indoor spaces would have provided for them. Next. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim Patton now to talk a little bit about the outdoor business program. Tim?
Thank you, Payman. Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Tim Patton, your Economic Development Manager. So as kind of Payman illustrated with those pictures, a lot of kind of variations with what restaurants are doing on streets, on private parking lots. As you can see, there's people that have numerous tables with like some landscaping and tents to prevent the heat, especially this week. So what I'm going to talk about is how the outdoor business, the outdoor dining program kind of turned into the outdoor business program. COVID has obviously changed our lives and how we do business, and more precisely where we do business. So we initially did the outdoor dining program that was approved by City Council back on June 23rd. And then really around the first week of July is when there were numerous like state regulations that were preventing a lot of retail, hair salons, other kind of establishments in the personal services industries from doing business indoors. So we quickly had to adapt to that and really expand the outdoor dining program to include other businesses. So the outdoor business program is in essence an expansion of the outdoor dining program. And this includes, as you can see, gyms, fitness centers, personal services, hair salons and barbershops, religious services, retail, museum, and galleries. With the hair salons and barbers, it was actually a bit tricky because there was actually a cosmetology code that would prevent salons and barbershops from operating outdoors even. And the initial regulation or the law or temporary law that would prevent barbershops from being indoors was handed down on July 13th. And then on July 20th, a week later, is when Governor Newsom reversed that and allowed for barbershops and hair salons to operate outdoors. This program is actually, you can basically do services outside in city parks. So for instance, Andrews Park, Ulatis Park. We've had a couple of, yoga and Pilates classes take place in the parks. The courtyards, downtown square with Los Reyes and Backdoor Bistro it's usually pretty busy during the lunch hour, during the week. So it's good to see activity there. As you kind of saw from previous photos that Payman just showed, city parking lots are full, and then obviously city right away. We do have La Brigada. That's the only restaurant that we have on city right away on a public street at this point. But that is certainly a possibility for any business to utilize with our temporary outdoor business program. Next slide, please. So this is our application. It's a facility license and use permit application. This is for any use of any city public facility. So obviously a park, any sort of courtyard, but primarily parks and other kind of city-owned facilities. It's a really kind of quick application. We are working very closely with our Parks and Recreation Department on kind of scheduling of activities and with our public facilities and our public places, not to coincide with other businesses who may want the same location at the same time, or quite frankly, any of the city maintenance issues that we have to conduct on a weekly basis. Next slide, please. So this is actually an example of an outdoor business fitness explosion elite training. It's maybe not ideal this week with the weather, but as you can see, they have the option to do activities outside. I've seen this in a number of jurisdictions throughout Northern California where they have a lot of physical activity classes outside in parking lots. So this is just one example of a temporary outdoor business conducting or doing as much as they can to appease their customers and stay in business during these tough times. Next slide, please. And also recently passed by the City Council on July 14th, I believe. We have a city incentive program that's really kind of focused around a small business grant program. This is open to small businesses that have 16 or fewer full-time equivalent employees. The grants are of up to $15,000 per application. There's a total pot of $440,000 using community development block grant funds. The program is really geared to those who have not received SBA loans and are existing Vacaville businesses. In fact, those are requirements. Our housing services department is working closely with the Housing Urban Development Federal Department to get the funds. It's actually taken a little bit longer than we would have liked. There's a little bit of federal red tape that we're having to go through, but we hope to have this thing rolled out in about 2 weeks, probably right around Labor Day weekend or that week after, to make the funds available and start accepting applications for this program. With HUD, there's obviously and the CDBG funds, there's a lot of strict eligibility requirements to qualify, income level requirements, just numerous other requirements that are necessary in order to be eligible for the program. We actually have a website up already that addresses some of these requirements for the small business grant program, and we will actually make it more marketable in the next week or so as we get closer to the actual rollout of the application process. And then as part of this program, the HUD funded or the CDBG funded program, we actually have the Senior Meals Program, which has been hugely successful the last few months here in Vacaville. We actually have looked at a couple of state programs that the state is offering to help feed seniors, but quite frankly, our program here in Vacaville is better than what the state is offering. So we have the ability to have a very generous community and a lot of generous people in terms of time and volunteering with this program. And so it's been hugely successful, and that is going to continue as part of this program. Next slide, please. So the outdoor, kind of going back to the outdoor business program, it's citywide. So there's no, it's not just focused on downtown or the Nut Tree or the premium outlets. It's a citywide program. There's a blend of outdoor services on both public and private property. The program will be in effect until at least December 31st. When it was approved by council, we had mentioned December 31st, but there's really, quite frankly, no telling how long this is going to go on. So the possibility of this extending past the end of the year is very relevant. The eligible businesses essentially cannot be businesses that are allowed to operate indoors. So like if you are not allowed to operate indoors at the moment based on state protocol, you are eligible to participate in this program. We work closely, the city staff works closely with the Chamber of Commerce and the Downtown Vacaville Business Improvement District in continuing to assist in the marketing efforts of this program. And businesses that actually lease out from a property owner must obtain either the property owner or property manager for approval. So it's necessary to have their approval as part of the application process to be part of the temporary outdoor business program. Next slide. Okay, I think that's it. And I think we're going to turn it back to the commission for questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Do I have any commissioners that have questions they would like to ask of staff before we go over to the public attendees? Don't see any hands coming up, but we'll come back to the commission. I see Teresa Stout has raised her hand online. So Ms. Stout, you can go ahead.
Good evening again, commissioners. This question is for Mr. Patton. Tim, I just heard you talk about the senior meal program again, and when I talked to HUD last week, that money is also tied up along with the grant money that it hasn't been released yet. What are you guys doing to serve the people that are on the program at this point? And also the people on the waiting list, because I've been trying to figure that one out, how you guys have been continuing. And then my second question is regarding park use. It was my understanding after I talked to some city officials that the parks are going to be used for Pilates, gym stuff, businesses that, martial arts, businesses that had to be closed at this time. So and the reason I was asking is because we wanted to run some food trucks, local food trucks, at some parks, but that's not in the mix at the moment, and that wasn't going to be part of the agreement. How are you moving forward with that? And those are my two questions. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Teresa. So on the first question, we have actually the disbursement of the CDBG funds has taken longer than we anticipated. Emily Camp, too, from our Housing Services Department, will be taking a council item to City Council next Tuesday, asking for some upfront money to help continue to fund the senior meal program immediately, so that we can actually continue this program immediately, even if it saves us 2 weeks, because this is obviously a vital part of our community efforts to help alleviate the burden on our seniors during COVID-19. So for next week's council agenda, we anticipate Emily taking an item that will actually help out to get some money to the program as quickly as possible.
Would that be amount?
I'm not sure exactly the funding. That's more of a housing question and Emily question. I'm not precise on the source of that money, but
okay.
And then regarding your second question and the park uses and food trucks, you know, there's actually, and I didn't know this until about a year ago, there's actually state legislation that was passed in 2017, I believe, that allows food trucks to operate on any sort of public right-of-way or public streets. So, and I forget the actual bill number, but we actually had some questions about this at council about a month ago. So food trucks are actually able to operate on public streets and public places.
Without a special permit or any of this?
That's my understanding. That's my understanding. I would actually have to reread the bill, but it was actually, like I said, I was unaware of this bill until it was pointed out to me about a year ago, and it's been in effect for 3 years, so well before COVID-19. And I can get you the bill number offline, but
okay.
And I would imagine that any advice that goes to the city council on that will also go through the city attorney as well as the economic development office to make sure that everything is lined up exactly right for the P's and Q's.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Any other member of the public wishes to comment? Seeing not, I'm going to jump back and see if there's any final comments from any of our commission members before we move on to our fourth business item. Any comments on this? Commissioner Alan Johnson.
Yeah, just one question, Tim. You mentioned that you had a website up and running with information on these business programs. Is that something that can be shared with the public now, or are you waiting till that is all ready to go?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It can absolutely be shared now. We don't have the actual application yet on that website. There's some information, but not a lot right now. So it can be shared. It may not have all the information that we had hoped to have on there at this moment, but absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
And it looks like that wraps us up for this item. We do have a 7D, which is the code update, and Mr. Baderi, Director Baderi, is leading the discussion on that. So Fred, go ahead.
Thank you very much. So this item is a report back to you on the status of the code update project. We're happy to announce that we received yesterday the full draft land use and development code from the consultant team at Lisa Wise Consulting. This will allow us to, this follows about a year, maybe slightly more than that, of work that the consultants and staff have done to prepare a draft, a revised draft of the land use and development code. The Planning Commission has reviewed this draft code in sections over that time period. And so at this point, the consultants have compiled the entire code, taking into account the comments received from the commission, the public, many stakeholder discussions over the last year. And so we don't have a presentation for you this evening on the code. We simply wanted to announce to you that the draft code is available. We're starting a 30-day review period for this public review draft, and we intend to return to the Planning Commission at your September meeting to have a full presentation on the draft from the consultants, as well as a review of comments that we hope to receive from interested members of the community over the next month. Following that, we will be hopefully preparing a final draft of the code and returning to the commission for a recommendation to city council before going on to the city council. So tonight's item is simply to announce to the commission that the public review draft code is available. It is available at the project website, the front page of which is showing on your screen now. And that is accessible to anyone, www.vacavillecodeup.com. And we really hope the commission has some time to take a look at that. We've tried to address all of the comments that we received over the last year or so. As an accompaniment to the short memo in your planning commission packet, we did put a copy of the annotated work plan and outline that was originally prepared in early 2019 for the code revision process. And that will serve as kind of a guide to what you should expect to see when you take a look at the full draft code. And that concludes my report to you on that item. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Do any members of the commission have questions for Mr. Baderi? I see none showing up. Do any members of the public have questions for Mr. Baderi? I also see no hands showing up there. Thanks. We'll take a look at it, and we should be warned that in the near future, we're going to be awfully darn busy with dealing with the final documents on the code. That concludes our business items. We now have a series of reports. Item number 8 is status on development and major projects. 8A, current planning.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Planning Commission. This is Albert Enoltz, Associate Planner with the Current Planning Division. Here to give you an update on the activity that occurred during the month of July. During July, we received 3 applications, the first being Roberts Ranch. Village B, new set of house plans being proposed by Carson Homes. They've submitted a plan development to construct 3 new house plans, all single stories, on 51 lots located in Village B and Roberts Ranch subdivision. The floor areas range from 1,800 square feet to 2,200 square feet, and the exterior elevations proposed for these houses would reflect Spanish farmhouse and craftsman theme architecture. Another project that we received is the Nut Tree Food Mart, which is a conditional use permit request to establish a convenience food market within an existing 2,000 square foot tenant space located at 2501 Nut Tree Road, Suite B. The proposal includes a sales counter, storage area, and shelving, and they've also liked to include some sales for alcohol beverages. So there is a city's determination of public convenience and necessity request with that one. Another proposal that we received is a modification request for the Nebula Bar and Grill. And that request is to establish a new restaurant and perform exterior changes in an existing building located at 301 Main Street in downtown Vacaville. Exterior alterations include painting the building gray, removal of an awning, new outdoor dining area, and some landscaping along Main Street and Parker Street. Proposed floor plan for that project includes a dining area, kitchen, storage area, and office, and they're looking to operate the restaurant from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Monday through Sunday. During July, we approved 2 development applications. One was for the Sam's Club fuel canopy. That was a modification proposal to expand the existing fuel station at 1500 Helen Power Drive next to Sam's Club. What they're looking at, what they were approved to do was expand their canopy by 1,300 square feet, remove 13 parking spaces, and really the whole purpose of this was to add 2 new fuel lanes to that gas station. And then a smaller change to the Regency Park Plaza plan sign program. That's for that neighborhood commercial development at 615 through 653 Elmira Road. And just changing some signage requirements to allow a new monument sign on Nut Tree Road. During July, we were still pretty busy with home-based businesses. We received 21 requests to establish businesses at homes, and we approved 22. We were also busy with plan checks. We reviewed around 100 building permit applications, primarily related to plot plan development in the Montera, Piedmont, and Cerrito area that is in the Vanden Estates development, southeast portion of the city. Also some house plans for the Farmstead development and Cambridge development. And during July, we helped serve 120 development-related inquiries and helped a couple of people with some zoning complaints. So that's it for current planning for the month of July.
Questions for staff from any of the commissioners? Seeing none, we will go on to Mr. Baderi for advanced planning.
Okay, and actually, Senior Planner Tyra Hayes is going to give you the report on advanced planning.
So good evening, commissioners, once again. Advanced planning has been quite busy these past few months. Tonight, you've heard about two of our large projects, the Downtown Specific Plan and the Land Use and Development Code update. In addition to those two projects, advanced planning is currently working on the Green Tree project. Most recently, staff has reviewed the final scopes of work for the infrastructure studies necessary for the project with the consultant. The next steps on the Green Tree project is to figure out the schedule for each of these plans. Staff is also continuing to work with our Public Works Department on incorporating vehicular miles traveled into our general plan transportation element. In addition to amending our general plan to include VMT requirements, we are also working to provide a CEQA clearance document for all future developments. This is definitely applicable to the earlier discussion tonight on the biotech strategy. In addition to those projects, the city has started to begin work on our next housing element update. Most recently, staff did receive a preliminary approval letter from the California Department of Housing and Community Development for the Local Early Action Plan Grant, or LEAP grant for short. This grant is in the amount of $300,000, and this money will be used to prepare the housing element update in-house, as well as provide additional housing-related updates to some of our documents. Also related to our housing element update, staff is beginning work with the Solano County Directors Group as part of reviewing the sub-regional housing needs allocation that will be assigned to Solano County as a whole. As part of this process, Solano County, along with its 7 cities, will work together to determine each jurisdiction's fair share of its RENA allocation for this next housing element cycle. Lastly, our big item that we are currently working on is the continued work on our cannabis ordinance. In early July, the City Council supported and approved the ballot measure that would be putting a cannabis tax measure on the November ballot. That concludes the report for advanced planning.
Okay. Again, do we have any questions for Ms. Hayes from members of the commission? Seeing none, it looks like we have Mr. Salazar here to give a building division report. Jay, go ahead. Okay, Salazar, are you there?
Uh-oh.
Mr. Salazar, are you online? I think the city attorney is going to see if she can go get Mr. Salazar's mute to unmute. And it appears that that is not a successful effort. So if Mr. Salazar does come online, we'll go ahead and go back to him. But right now I'm going to move on to item number 9, which is Director's Reports 9A, City Council action pertaining to Planning Commission items. I assume we'll hear that from Mr. Baderi.
Yes. So thank you, and I'm happy to go maybe scroll through Jay's slides after this report if he's unable to connect. The City Council did, as Tyra mentioned, place a cannabis tax ballot measure on the November ballot. If that goes through, then eventually you may see items related to cannabis ordinances coming back to the commission at a future date. As you heard earlier, also, the council took action on the outdoor dining and then the more expanded outdoor business ordinance at their recent meetings, and those programs are underway now. The council also heard a report on the biotechnology and advanced manufacturing initiative that similar to the one you heard, although going into some of the phase 2 discussion that Mr. Burris mentioned earlier. And then at their next meeting, the City Council will consider the industrial buildings reviewed by the Planning Commission at Aviator Way and East Monte Vista Avenue last month. So you recommended approval of a general plan amendment and design review for 2 very large industrial buildings at that location. That item goes before the City Council for consideration next week. And that is our report on items at the council level. So were we able to, Jay?
I do not see Mr. Salazar's name showing up on the participant list.
Okay. All right.
So Fred, why don't you go ahead and hit 9B, the schedule.
So we have for your, the items coming up at this point on the schedule are next month, September 15, consideration of the code update. So we'll be reviewing the public review draft. We will have the consultant team present to provide you with a presentation on that and some of the main features, and especially a review of some of the comments that we hope to receive over the next several weeks, and report to you on how we might address those issues. And that would include certainly any items that the Planning Commission wants to bring to our attention over the next month. The downtown specific plan may be ready to present some additional preliminary information to the commission at your next meeting as well. At this point, we have 2 hotel projects that are tentatively, that are not yet tentatively scheduled for Planning Commission, but that will require Planning Commission consideration. One located in the downtown area near Mason Street and Interstate 80. The other on East Monte Vista Avenue near Browns Valley Parkway and Allison Drive. Those have not yet proceeded far enough through the process for us to give you a tentative date on their Planning Commission hearing dates, but we'll report that to you as soon as we're aware. And that
I expect that the items on the development code will be pretty heavy lifts, and so just thinking let's make sure we don't overload particular evenings with something that's going to have an hour plus on development code and then several important projects as well.
Very good. Thank you. Yes, we'll keep that in mind.
Thank you.
All right. And that concludes our review of upcoming items.
Is there anything you want to do for going back and looking at Mr. Salazar's discussion tonight, or should we put that one off until next month?
That might be better. We could scroll through the slides, but it would be helpful to have Jay's review of some of the issues they're addressing, and we could combine those reports in our next report back to you.
Okay. Given how the building code works, I think having the expert as well as the expert slides is probably well advised. So we'll push that off until next month. Item number 10 is commissioner comments. Now's our last chance for comments before we close out for the evening. Are there any members of the commission who wish to electronically raise their hand and make final comments? And since Commissioner Aldrich is here, she can physically raise her hand, but she's not doing so. And I don't see any other blue hands that are coming up. So it appears we've reached the end of this evening's meeting. Thank you all for being here. I'm glad that the power has largely stayed on, and I hope it is relatively cool wherever you are going. Stay hydrated, stay safe, and good night, Vacaville. We are adjourned.